Hello, my name's Annette Moody. I suffered a spinal stroke in September 2013 and I was diagnosed initially as an Asia A complete, paralysed from my neck downwards. Gradually over the last year, it's now October 2014, I've started to recover and I'm now an Asia D incomplete. I had a tracheostomy for 6 months, during which time 3 months of which I was ventilated during the day, and then for 3 months just at night time. Since the last 6 months, I've been free of the tracheostomy and free of the ventilator, but I have a small non-invasive ventilator. It was very uncomfortable. Although I was paralysed, I could still feel pain, and the tube rubbed in my throat constantly, so much so that it ended up being ulcerated. The changing of the dressing, which happens every night, was particularly uncomfortable, particularly gruelling. Because it was so super sensitive, when the dressing was changed, then I ended up coughing and gagging for at least a half an hour afterwards, sometimes for much longer. So I found the whole process really difficult. But when I was in bed, particularly during the daytime, how the tubing was tethered was particularly important. That was very sensitive. And I was in 3 hospitals throughout that time. And those hospitals where they had a daisy or some way of securing it were much better for me than those where they used a bandage or a sheet. I found that particularly challenging because it meant that I couldn't really move or sometimes even get comfortable. But it wasn't, despite the fact it saved my life, it wasn't a particularly pleasant experience. So suctioning was a really bad experience for me. And it was universal. Wherever it was done and by whoever, it was always very painful. I was convinced, absolutely certain, that the suction device was like a little bottle brush, that it had spikes at the bottom that kind of somehow gathered together the stuff and brought it up. And I was really shocked when after a few weeks I was talking to one of the nurses and they showed me what it looked like, because it just looks nothing like it feels. It's very, very rough and very scrapey, and it feels like you're being cut or scratched every time it's done. And so my biggest suggestion would be suction as little as you possibly can, because it must be doing damage if it hurts that much. It was really difficult to persuade nurses to stop doing it. And I was lucky that I started to recover a cough, and so moving to assisted coughs was much better for me than having the suction device. The other interesting thing was bagging was amazing. I loved it. It was like being able to take a breath of fresh air. And I know that it was considered to be something that shouldn't be used too regularly. But certainly in the early days, when my diaphragm didn't work at all, being bagged was just the highlight of my day. So if there's an opportunity to review that protocol and consider doing it more often, then I would definitely consider it, because that not only did it feel nice, but it also made me feel better as well.
So can you tell me about how they managed your eating and drinking?
Initially with an NG tube. I had the NG tube fitted whilst I was awake. It's not a pleasant experience, but it was relatively quick and not too arduous. I found being fed by the NG tube unpleasant though, because I had a reaction to the feed. And so I found that I got a burning sensation up through my stomach and into my mouth, which they then needed to treat, which felt strange that the food that I was being given needed me to be given drugs to resolve it. So I worked with the team, and we managed to find a way where they could start me eating baby food so that I didn't need to be fed by the NG tube. And luckily, so that I didn't need to have a peg fitted. But it was quite challenging to start off eating. I think just because everyone was so concerned that it might cause me problems, but luckily it didn't.